We've all been here. You want to take a big trip, but you're so overwhelmed with information and decisions you don't know where to begin. Enter the Afar Travel Advisory Council, a group of travel experts ready to help you take your travels from dream to reality. When you work with an advisor, you can count on expertise and a one-on-one relationship every step of the way, because it's about trust. From custom trip planning to providing 24/7 white glove service, advisors make it easy to travel with confidence so you can get back to the wonders of travel. Learn more and meet your advisor at afar.com/TAC. More than 6,000 people have summited Mount Everest. More than 500 people have rowed across an ocean. 12 humans have walked on the moon. But only 10 people have walked around planet Earth, and just one dog. Over the next 2 episodes, you'll hear the story of the last person to do that. A man named Tom Turcich, who, along with his dog Savannah, took a world walk that spanned 7 years, 28,000 miles, 38 countries, and 6 continents. I'm Aislinn Green, Associate Director of Podcasts at Afar, and this is Unpacked, the podcast that unpacks a tricky topic in travel every week. This week and next, I'm handing the mic over to Jason Moore, host of the Zero to Travel podcast, which helps people travel the world on their terms, no matter their situation or experience. Jason spoke with Tom 3 different times over 6 years, unpacking the lessons Tom learned from walking around our planet and how an epic journey like this can transform an individual and reveal what it means to be human. Now, because their conversations were so extensive, we broke them into 2 different episodes. You'll hear part 1 today and part 2 next Thursday. I hope you find them as insightful and inspiring as I did. Now, here's Jason.
Greetings and welcome to the show, my friend. I am Jason Moore, a former nomad and current travel junkie who calls Oslo, Norway home. If you enjoy what you hear today and you want more, you can find my show, Zero to Travel, anywhere you listen to podcasts or visit zerototravel.com. Before we dive in, a little background on how these conversations came to be. I first connected with Tom back in 2016. At that time, he had spent 15 months walking from his home in New Jersey all the way to Ecuador. And when I first heard his story, I was hooked. Human-powered adventures and the people who undertake them have always fascinated me. And as a traveler, I've often indulged in what I call the Forrest Gump fantasy. You know the one I'm talking about, right? One day you decide you've had enough of the routines of daily life. You're out of here. So you leave your house on a whim, you bike, run, walk, skateboard, unicycle, whatever, down the block, around the corner, out of your neighborhood, and you don't stop. You just keep going. Perhaps you've indulged in this fantasy as well. But fantasies aside, I think what most attracts me to human-powered travel of any distance, whether it's a walk down the street or a walk around the world, is how accessible it feels. How it keeps you in such close contact with a place and its people. It's travel in its purest form. Although admirable, adventures like climbing the 7 summits or skiing to the North Pole or sailing around the world often don't feel attainable to the average person. They seem reserved for elite athletes in some cases, people who have a lot of extra cash on hand. But Tom is an elite athlete, and walking around the world is a rare accomplishment and one of the most difficult adventures to undertake. So why does it feel so accessible? Why is he so relatable? Maybe it's because walking doesn't involve teams of people and loads of gear. I mean, I own clothes, I own sneakers. Maybe I could just walk out of my front door and keep going. It's a romantic idea for sure, but the reality of a walk around the world is, of course, much more complicated and difficult. And over the next 2 episodes, you're going to hear about it all, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Now, let's get into my conversations with Tom. Where are you? It's morning for you. You're sipping coffee. I see some bright colors in the background. I think maybe somewhere in South America right now.
Yeah, so I am in Ecuador. I'm in El Guapo, little city on the coast of Ecuador. I'm about 200 kilometers from the border of Peru. And once I leave here, it'll be a little under a week until Peru, and then I'll be in the deserts. But yeah, Wi-Fi is rare, and we coordinated this, I guess, last week, and I timed the walk just right so I could get into this hotel last night and be here this morning to talk to you.
Oh, dude. Well, man, now I feel a little bad. Like, I mean, I hope that it worked out okay logistically. It sounds like it did,
Yeah.
but I appreciate
Just
that.
make it worth my while.
We will try our best. And I know the people that are listening right now appreciate it as well, because you got a lot of stuff to share around this story. And I guess the first question is like, we're both from the East Coast. I'm from outside of Philly. You're from New Jersey, right?
Yeah, outside of Philly. Eagles fan, of course.
All right, me too. And, New Jersey isn't exactly known as a walking destination or anything. I mean, how did this New Jersey boy start walking on this crazy trip and is now down in South America? Like, what was your life like growing up in Jersey? Did you travel as a kid or?
Yeah, as a kid, did a little bit of traveling with my family, not much. Went to Jamaica, and we would go down to Virginia. Did a lot of skiing with my dad growing up. But internationally, not that much. Ski trip to Canada, and then when I was in 10th grade, went to England, Ireland, and Wales. But as far as the walk, it's a very specific dream, I guess, that I had. And it started when I was 17. My good friend Anne-Marie passed away. She was in like this freak jet ski accident. And her death came at a formative time for me. I was 17, and I'd never had someone close to me die before. And it was this realization that this does not last forever, and you actually die, and you need to make what you have worthwhile. And so after she passed away, there's a couple months of real confusion, and I didn't know where I stood in the world, how I fit death into living just a day-to-day life and going to school and just going through my everyday patterns. And so I had to reconsider everything, and I was kind of in this fog. And then a friend played Dead Poet Society, which I'm sure you've seen, but Carpe Diem, seize the day, all that. And in kind of this raw condition that I was in, it really stuck with me, and it hit me deep. And I was like, this is it. This is the answer. Carpe Diem, seize the day. And I was a senior in high school at this point. And I knew I needed to live and get out there and see more. And I searched for cheap ways to travel and found this guy, Carl Bushby, who back in, I think, 93, he started Walk Around the World. And he's an ex-British paratrooper, fascinating guy. But I found him and thinking in my 17-year-old mind with $1,000 in my bank account, I was like, well, I could do this after high school. I could leave and walk around the world with $1,000. Like, that's doable. Obviously, not doable. You need more than $1,000 unless you're planning on stopping every month to work somewhere. But so that planted the idea of walking around the world in my head. And then it was going to college. I graduated with psychology and philosophy. But while I was there, I worked with the head of business, trying to get sponsors to walk around the world. And as time went on through college, the idea just continued to grow and just took over a greater and greater part of me. And it kind of evolved more from at 17, it was just an idea and a dream and a goal. But as the years went on, and I thought about it, every night before I went to bed, thinking of, I'd love to be in Ecuador right now, or I'd love to be in El Salvador on this great adventure. It kind of just grew into a part of me, and I couldn't separate it. And so it became this total focus where after I graduated college, I was putting in solar panels, which was good work. I was outside. I liked it, got paid well. I lived at home, and I just saved just everything I had. I rarely went out. I didn't buy anything. I just went to the gym. I put in solar panels. I wrote at night or in the morning, and just saved and saved and saved for I guess 3 or 4 years. And then once I had a big enough chunk of money where I thought I could bleed this out while paying my loans, and I could bleed this out to Uruguay, and hopefully by then I'd have some sponsors that would see me through the other 5 continents. So then, in the day before my 26th birthday, which was last year in April, I left, and I just kind of took my chances. And that is the origin of the walk.
I guess every superhero has like his or her origin story. It's pretty powerful how long you held on to this dream and kept it alive. I mean, it sounds like it never really wavered. It just kept getting bigger and more prominent in your mind. Is that accurate? I mean, was there a time where you were kind of like doubting that this would be a thing, or did like this switch flip and you were just like, I'm definitely doing this. I don't care how long it takes?
Yeah, it was both. When I was younger, 17 and beginning college, it was, like I said, small and kind of took a back seat to things. But then as it went on and I was towards graduating college and people were talking about their plans and what they wanted to do, then it really strengthened. And there wasn't anything else I wanted to do. When I thought about, did I want to go into insurance? Did I want to be a psychologist? I just wanted to walk. That was it. I wanted to see the world slowly and meet people and be in weird situations and go on an adventure. But I had a girlfriend starting junior year in college, and we dated for 4 years. She was a wonderful, wonderful girl. I loved her. She's fantastic. If I hadn't have had the walk, I would have married her. But there's a period after college, the most difficult period of my life, where it was a choice between her and the walk. And honestly, the walk had just grown too strong in me, and I didn't have a choice. And I would have loved to have been with her. But if I had stayed with her, I would have been bitter towards her. I would have been bitter towards maybe like my kids growing up, and I would say, give up on your dream. It's not worth it because, other things will take over. So ended things with her. And then after that, I had ended things with her, and it was the walk. So it was one or the other, and I knew it at that time.
You weren't going to give up something that was awesome and not do the other thing, right?
Exactly. Thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, and I totally understand that. It's just really cool to see how you've carried through on this and how you've had the tenacity, I guess, to like just keep saving, keep pushing, and then even going so far as to like end a relationship for this dream. Now you're out there doing it. Was there anybody externally that was discouraging you, or that thought maybe this was a bad idea?
Well, there wasn't anyone in particular that was like vicious against it. And my dad was all for it. My dad, he had lived in Hawaii for 5 years under a tarp when he was my age. He's like a wild man.
Yeah.
So I told him, yeah, go for it, whatever.
So it runs in the family, right?
Yeah. I guess my mom plays devil's advocate, but smartly so, just to I have these wild ideas all the time, and she plays devil's advocate to test them out and make sure they're sound ideas. But I think for most of my friends and family, I've been talking about the walk for so long, and I didn't mention it often, and usually it was only late at night over some beers or something.
Right, you're like, I'm going to do this walk.
Exactly. I swear to you. I swear.
But you did tell people. I mean, that's an important part of the process, I think, to make it real.
Yeah, I think there's a line where tell people who care about you and who have the best idea of you, and who trust you. But don't go around in a bar telling people you're going to do this wild thing that, you don't know and that you're not friends with. It's just, it's do it before you're talking about
right.
it. I don't mean
actions speak louder than words type of thing. Yeah,
exactly. But yeah, so I talked about the walk with my friends in college and my family, and I think they always knew that it was something that meant a lot to me, but I have to give up a lot to make it happen. I mean, it's not an ordinary dream where, I want my CPA to be an accountant, or, I want to work on Wall Street, and I don't have to give up my close friends or my family. But with the walk, I'm gone for 5 years, and I haven't seen my family since Georgia, I guess, was the last time I saw them. But I like I said, I had to give up this girl I was very much in love with. I have to give up my family, my friends. Not to say that I don't talk to them, but it's a big cut. And my friends understood that, and my family understood that. They weren't doubtful, I'd say, but kind of the odds were stacked against me. And there's a reason there's not a lot of people walking around the world. It's because there's a lot of things you got to cut off.
Whenever you're giving up something like the traditional job and the girlfriend, all the sort of regular status quo things, it's always seen as giving it up. But actually, like when you're working on Wall Street or whatever it is, you're also giving stuff up too. Like you would be giving up the walk, or you'd be giving up pursuing another career. Or I mean, like anytime you do something, you're giving something up. So basically, you just decided the walk was the most important thing that you didn't want to give up. And I love that. I love that when you were like finishing school, you were looking at your options and you're like, well, I want to do this walk. I don't want to do all this stuff, like get a job as a psychologist or start a practice or become a CPA or whatever it is. And I think that's hugely important in terms of like a lesson, because like, it's like, take your dream seriously, right? Like it's an actual viable option, although it might sound ridiculous and you're not sure how you're going to do it. The fact that you're saying, well, like this is the thing I actually want to do, even though everything else is like kind of the things that you're quote unquote supposed to do, or like that most people would do. You're just choosing the thing you want to do essentially and prioritizing it. And, over a lot of time, sounds like about 8 years of prep for you, you've now gotten to the point where you can do it. So and
I think the other thing you need to realize too, or just people need to realize, is that everything you have, you don't just have that thing, you have all the responsibilities attached to that thing. So if you have a house, you have all the responsibilities attached to the house. If you have a wife, you have all the responsibilities attached to a wife. So you have to be careful about the things that you bring with you, or the things that you buy or that you have, because you're not just getting that thing. Before the walk, when I was trying to decide between my girlfriend and the walk, or trying to decide between, it would be great to have a house. It'd be a really nice life. And I could picture it in my mind, but then that would mean, I'd be tied into most likely, 40-hour-a-week job. And then after that, if I was living in the city or wherever, I'd have to get a car, and that means more loans. And it just starts this cycle of responsibilities. And I have more responsibilities tied to me, and that's more things I'd have to cut off to travel freely, which is like what I'm doing now, and I'm fortunate enough to be doing. And I think that's the goal of everyone who's traveling, or who idealizes traveling, is just the idea of just less responsibilities. And it's just being aware of all the little things that are attached to these things that we idealize. Yeah.
Philosophically, then, are you somebody who practices detachment as like a personal philosophy? I guess that would be more of an Eastern philosophy, I suppose.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I practice it by choice, but I guess it is by choice now. But yeah, I don't have a choice. It's all detachment for me on the road, and it's all like suppressing temptation. So I'm walking by like, I don't know, a batido, place making smoothies, And man, I would love to stop there, but I can't spend the money, and there's more miles on the road. So it's every day is a practice in suppressing temptations for me.
Well, I mean, I hope you're enjoying the occasional smoothie too. It looks like you got a solid cup of coffee there.
I've had the best smoothies in the world. I'm just drenched in sweat and it's 100 degrees and I'm dying, and I sit down and have this pure banana and pineapple smoothie, and it's only $1. I've had amazing smoothies.
So, are there any rules around this walk? Like, I mean, I know you said you're walking on all continents, but are you actually doing like a proper walk around the world where you're going like one border of the continent to the other? Is this 5 years set in stone? Like, have you kind of constructed these rules, or is it loosey-goosey?
Loosey-goosey. So Carl Bushby, the guy who I saw at 17 and inspired this, he had 3 very strict rules, and it was basically walk an unbroken path and back to his home in the UK, and he was not allowed to go home until he finishes that unbroken path. But he's been on the road for 15 years through complications and visas and everything like that. And I mean, I've never been one for rules. I think rules are stupid. Like, every situation is different, and I just don't find the need for it. If there's just actually in Colombia, I took a car like 25 kilometers, and it's the first time I've done that since crossing this bridge in Texas. But I wanted to give myself that option because these locals had warned me off the area, and I'd never been in an area like that where the locals were so fervently saying, if you go through here, you will be robbed for sure. Like, don't walk through there. There's nothing there. It's desert. There's people sitting in the hills just waiting for you. And I've never been warned off like that before. And if I'd had a rule, I would have had to pass through there. So there's no rule. No, it's, I just want to see the world. I want to enjoy it. I want to walk through as much as I can and see these weird little towns and meet weird little people. And I want to plant my feet on every continent. But as far as rules, forget the rules.
I love it. You have a canine companion with you, don't you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Savannah. So I adopted her in Austin, and we've crossed every border together since. And she's a great little companion. She helps me sleep at night. She's listening, and I can sleep.
That's awesome. So take us back to the day that you actually woke up, you had breakfast or whatever you had or whatever you did. Like, what was it like the night before your first day? And then what was it like taking those first steps? Like, really, if you could take us there, man, I'd love to hear it. Like, because so much build up to this. Like, it's an insane story, an insane amount of build up to just getting out there on the road. So what was that experience like?
Yeah, well, I guess it really started to hit me the year before I left. I decided, I was like, okay, I'm leaving before my 26th birthday. And so that year I started really putting things into place. And then a couple months before I was leaving, I started laying in bed, and I would have these thoughts like, in a year from now, I'm going to be in like the middle of El Salvador, and I'm going to wake up in El Salvador. And I kept having that like every night. Like, I'm going to wake up in El Salvador in a year from now. And then the night before I left, I barely got any sleep. It was up till, I don't know, 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning, and then woke up at 6 or 5, something like that. And in the morning, actually a bunch of neighbors came over, and we had this box of L&M. I don't know if you know L&M donuts, but they're these amazing donuts from Jersey. And
Jersey pride. There's the Jersey pride there.
It's in there somewhere. And so my neighbor Bob, he's like 92 years old. He's a great guy. He came over, so and his favorite is these powdered cream donuts. So we had a box of powdered cream, and I ate a couple donuts and had all these neighbors over and kids, and there's probably like 35, 40 people. Which isn't what I was expecting, like I was prepared to just walk out the door, a complete unknown. But a couple of weeks before, there had been articles written and stuff like that. And so there's some word out. But But then, so I had this cart. I had a different cart than I have now. And the cart was built by this guy, Tom Marchetti, who owns a makerspace in the town over from me, but is from the same town that I am. And so when I went over to this makerspace months before and said, this is my plan, I need to carry a bunch of things. I'd like to have it in a cart so my back isn't being crushed all the time and I can carry more. And he found out I was from Haddon Township, the same town as he is. He's like, yeah, absolutely. I'll get behind you and I'll try and find you some sponsors as well. So he built this cart for me. And on the day I was leaving, April 2nd, I had it loaded up with way too many things, like such a novice. Like I was going to the AT with a 50, 60 pound pack. And then, I dumped 20 pounds of it. But
this was essentially like a trailer that you drag, right?
Yeah. Well, initially,
you push.
Yeah, I pushed. Yeah. So initially I had went to Tom Marchetti with this burly trailer that I thought I could attach to my belt. And when I showed that to him, he said, we can make something better than this. So it's just like an aluminum box, basically, with a top that would lock and two wheels so I could push it. So I had this thing, this crate, it was like a safe, loaded up with things. And then at 7 a.m, I just walked out my front door and turned down the road and walked towards my elementary school and over the Ben Franklin Bridge.
But how did you feel? Like, how did you feel?
Oh man, I was amped. I was excited. Yeah. I was delirious. I was living finally. Like, it was this really strange feeling. I'd been thinking about this since I was 17. I would lay in bed at college. I had a world map on my wall in college, and I would lay in bed and just like think about this map and like, I got to break out of here. I got to see this thing through. And then to actually be on the road, like taking those first steps, I was like, I was through the moon. It was insane. I was delirious. I was walking through Camden, which is the most dangerous city in America, like grinning, waving at people. And they're like, what is this guy doing? This guy's insane. And, for this couple hours, like I could have been robbed. I could have been stabbed. Anything terrible could have happened and it wouldn't have fazed me. I was, this thing had been 8 years in the making, and it was finally, I was taking my first steps. It was unreal.
Yeah, they were just like, well, that guy just has awesome energy. We're just going to leave him alone. Something's going on there, something special. But it's funny because, it's this huge thing, and I just love the idea of, walking out of your front door, and that's all you did, really. I mean, like, it's not all you've done. I'm not belittling it. What I mean, though, it's if you simplify it, it's empowering to think that you walked out your front door and now you are in Ecuador. You know what I mean? Like, you've just been walking, and I don't know. There's a beauty in the simplicity of that, I think, when you can start an adventure right out of your front door. But it must be pretty funny, like the first couple nights, because you're almost home. Right? You're like in areas that was it kind of weird? Because you're like, all right, I'm still in Philly, or,
Yeah, certainly. Actually, so the cart I had it loaded up with way too much stuff, and it had these like run flat, plastic tires on it. And only 3 days out, I was only just like in Pennsylvania somewhere, and the tire snapped. And I just like called my dad and was like, "Yo, Dad, like, my tire broke. Can you drive out a new one?" And
he was there in an hour.
Yeah, exactly. It was like an hour. It was an hour drive, right? 45 minutes. And actually, he didn't drive it. It was my sponsor, Philadelphia Sign, the CEO, and his like right hand man drove me out like and some new tires. But it was very. Kind of brought me back down to earth. It was like, oh yeah, you're 45 minutes away. You're not on this amazing adventure yet.
But you were, and that's how it all starts. So far now you've walked through the U.S. and then Central America and South America and where you are now. How do those three places compare? And I mean, I don't want to generalize three essentially large land masses because there's multiple countries within Central America, obviously each of these continents, and then, going through different states is different. But like you mentioned in the beginning of our chat, you're like, well, actually maybe it was before we started recording, but we're like, there's a difference between like when you're in a culture that and you grew up in the States, so you're familiar, and then when you cross a border and there's a little more of like this naive sort of, not really knowing what's going on around you as much because the awareness is just it's a different culture. So how was the experience walking through your own country? And then I guess I wanted to hear a little bit more about what it's like to go on foot through Central America and South America so far.
Yeah, so the U.S. was fantastic. It's
not a place known for walking, again, like as far as like all the highways and the roads. And
it's true, it's not, but there's such a great network of roads. And that's one of the starkest things as a walker that you realize from the U.S. And then as soon as you cross out of it is that in Central America and South America, there's highways or main roads that are paved, but any road off of that is a dirt or rock path. But in the States, a dirt or rock path is like exceedingly rare. And even when you're in these old back roads, you can find these little shortcut back roads and walk through the woods, and you're on this little nice paved road, and it's nice, peaceful walking. But the States, I took it for granted growing up there. States is an amazing place, so well developed. And then growing up there, knowing the culture, knowing the language, the people are fantastic. Everyone's super, super friendly. Supermarkets everywhere. Supermarkets are the greatest thing in the world. Never take them for granted. It's amazing. So initially, I was thinking of going to Portugal first and starting and just going through Europe, but I figured I wanted to go to South America, and if I start in the U.S., it'd kind of be like my training wheels. I'd be able to get my bearings, and then I'd be crossing out of the country, and I'd have a good idea of how to handle things. And so I had traveled, I guess, as far down as South Carolina before, and I've been to Florida and stuff, but I'd never been to Georgia. I'd played tennis in South Carolina and Florida. So then once I got into Georgia, it was essentially new country for me. I'd never been in Georgia before. And so Savannah is a beautiful place, and crossing over. And then I was in the American South during summer, which was excruciating and just brutal. There's 110-degree days, and I passed through this heat wave, and at one point my hands swelled up to like my fingers were like bratwurst. And I had to just sit in the shade until, it passed. It was like 100, heat index was 120, whatever degrees. But so that was really tough. The humidity was really tough. And in Alabama, there's just no wind, and it was brutal. But it's beautiful country, and walking through farmlands, endless farmlands, friendly people. And it was nice just seeing a part of the country that I'd never seen before. And you see it at a very slow pace. You pass through the farm towns, you pass through these one-horse towns where, maybe there's a general store and not much else, and then pass through the swamps of Louisiana, which were terrible for walking, with the mosquitoes and the humidity, but so cool because you're seeing gators and these beautiful cypress trees, and just this like, the country's so big and diverse that you could spend a lifetime in the States and still not see it all and comprehend it all. So it was really nice just seeing a different part of the place that I've grown up in.
Like you mentioned, there's a gradual shift in culture and climate when you're walking. It doesn't sound like the heat wave was very gradual, but is that one of the appeals for you for in terms of like a mode of travel and walking being that preferred mode for you?
Yeah, it's very meditative, the walk, especially during the States. What I found for the first 6 months until I got out of the States was like, I started to think of it as like I was gardening my mind or my past. And so as I was walking, I would walk, 6, 8 hours a day. And I would just go through my garden and prune and weed a little bit until I had everything looking a little bit nicer. And then the next day I'd do a little more weeding. And by the time I got out of the States, it was like, I didn't have any, like right now, I have no problems.
What are the weeds?
The weeds are just bad thoughts or bad habits or maybe, bad memories. Lost a friend or, if maybe with my ex, it was like, if I had done this or our life could have been like this. And with walking, you're able to play out just every possibility you can imagine. And you find that, I'm glad I made the decision I made and everything is all right. Like I just don't have any problems. I've thought over all the bad memories. I've turned them over from every which angle and every shade of light so many times that, I can just cast them aside now and just look at the road ahead of me. And it's a really beautiful thing. And I didn't expect it. But by the time I got out of the States, it was like I'd been purged and it was a wonderful feeling. Yeah.
Just for that reason alone, I mean, the walk has already been worth it, right?
Yeah, I recommend it to everyone. I think it's very easy to neglect the care of your mind, and
when things are so
you don't really
busy.
think about it. It's kind of a passive thing, but walking was a great boon towards that.
Because we're both from the East Coast, I know that the atmosphere there it's very like high paced, kind of fast paced, I'd say, high is sort of everybody, like the hustle and bustle, like imagine what people think of New York City or whatever. But the whole like Northeast area is got that like frantic energy vibe as far as my experience. And like everybody, I shouldn't say everybody because I'm generalizing, but the general energy is that it's like a little bit chaotic, a little bit like fast paced. Maybe people are a little more on edge or maybe a little more angry than in other parts of the country. It's not always true, but you've spent time in New Jersey, you know what it's like. Do you agree? And like, how has it been to get out of that now?
Yeah, I totally agree. Northeast is a madhouse. And then even once you get into the American South, people start, you're waiting in line and people start talking to you and you're like, what is this? They're having a conversation waiting in line. Like, let's get down to business and let's, I'm going to pay for this thing. I'm going to leave. I'm not going to say a word to anyone. Maybe I'll scout a few people, but that's it. But you get down to the South and it's, the culture is different there immediately. And people it's a little slower. People are talking to each other. And, Central America is a whole nother world, but it's not like the Northeast. Northeast is a unique place.
Yeah, it is. And there's part of me that I love that I grew up there because there's certain elements of my personality that obviously you're influenced by where you are that I like. But now I like to, if you can, kind of curate the good and the bad from every place you go, I guess. When you're traveling like this full time, it can, I know in my experience, I've had this feeling where like, sometimes I feel like, well, this is exactly where I belong. I belong on the road and this is home and this is just the way of life. And other times I felt like, am I just like an outsider looking in on everybody's lives everywhere I go? And am I just being an observer? Like, cause I'm not really participating in these communities. Like as a community member, I'm just kind of walking through and passing through as a traveler. It's just a different way of living, I guess. And sometimes I would struggle with that a little bit because you are a participant, but then you're like temporary. You're just like this ghost passing through town. Like overall, though, I felt like being on the road and living on the road was the right choice. But do you ever feel that like sort of outsider looking in type of feeling?
I definitely, but I like that feeling.
Yeah.
Strangely,
right.
I definitely, I think it was most noticeable to me when I was in Veracruz, which is on the Gulf Coast of Mexico. And I stayed there for a week. My body was really tired. I had walked straight from the border pretty much down to there. So I took a week off, stayed at an Airbnb, and I just kind of wandered through the city and saw the sights and, sat in some cafes, and I didn't know anyone. And I definitely just felt like a ghost. But I like that. It's nice. I like observing it. You're doing something without doing anything, and you're seeing this different culture, and you're comparing it to how things, how things are at home versus how things are there. And so I like that aspect of it. And then when I can talk to someone and get brought in for dinner or get brought in for a night, that's great too. You feel like you're a little bit less of a ghost, even though it's still in my mind that I'm going to leave in the morning, or I'm going to leave in a few hours, and we're never going to see each other again. Maybe we'll email or something, but I'm going to be gone. And it's something I came to terms with a long time ago. And like you said, it's just a different lifestyle. And maybe you can't go as deep into a culture as if I were in the Peace Corps and I would stay somewhere for 2 years. But I get to walk down the street and sample all the different spices and try a little bit of everything, and then see what I like.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I agree with you. I don't think it's a bad thing. It's just an observation or being an observer, I guess. And, like when you talk about passing through or living nomadically in that way for a period of time, I mean, it's also possible for you to do that at home. Like if you get into this routine where like, oh, you just go to work, you come home and you just do the same thing every night or whatever, then like, you could just as easily be a ghost at home too if you're not out there doing things. So I don't think being on the road is a bad thing. But it is something that popped up for me, and I was curious how you thought about the long-term sort of full-time living on the road, because really you're traveling, but really you're just living your life. You just happen to be living your life on the road, because at some point when you're traveling continuously, you're not really traveling anymore. You're just living your life. Like
exactly. Yeah. It's not,
and it is a different thing, because then your life has way more unpredictable, like different types of routines, but you still have your routines, right? Like you still get up, you walk, you have your coffee or whatever it is, if you can, and you have to set up your camp at night or find your place to stay or whatever. I want to ask you about some of the logistics, but first you just mentioned like talking to people and people coming up to you, and I'm sure there's no shortage of conversations happening. One of the great things about walking is you're like right there, you're not in a car like surrounded by steel or whatever, and you're pushing this giant trailer, so I'm sure it's a pretty good conversation piece. This
for better or worse,
gringo just rolling through town, and what's that been like? Like, I want to hear about the strange encounters and then the encounters with strangers.
Yeah, I mean, man, it's been a lot. So like you said, I'm pushing this baby carriage. So I switched from the original car, and I'm pushing this baby carriage now. And it's this big red thing, and I have my dog Savannah with me, and I'm tall and white.
How tall are you?
6'2", maybe 6'3".
Yeah.
And outside the U.S., I'm sticking out like a sore thumb. I get a lot of people talking to me. 99% of the people are just wondering what I'm doing. Why are you passing through here? Why are you pushing a baby carriage? What's in there? They get kids asking me what's in there, or kids wanting to learn a little English, or seeing if I know any Spanish. Women, mothers, daughters, whatever, love Savannah. I think she's the cutest thing. And like every single day since I crossed into Mexico, all the way through Central America, South America, every day, at least like 5 times a day, I'll have people asking me to give them Savannah. And at first I'm like,
give your dog away?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, they're like, oh, give her to me. Or, how much, or they're asking if she has babies. But like in Mexico, when it first started, I was like, oh, that's so funny. Like, it's a nice compliment. But after like so many times, every day, I'm like, yep, she's my dog.
They're serious.
She's my best friend. I'm going to keep her. I'm going to hold on to her. And yeah, so I've had countless offers for Savannah. Obviously, not going to give her away to anyone. But yeah, as far as strange encounters, man, there's been a lot of strange people. There's let's see, border in Mexico was I crossed into from McAllen in the U.S. to Reynosa, and before I went in, like a couple months before I went in, there's a big shooting in Reynosa, and it's not one of the safer border towns. Really dusty place. And it was my first day out of the States, so I was, hyper aware state. But I met at some gas stations, met a couple of drug dealers who work for the cartel, and they were telling me about working for the cartel and how little they get paid. It's like, that's interesting. I'm going to get out of here. I don't want to be anywhere near this. And then you meet like strange people. I meet a lot of homeless guys. Indigente, there's people who are living on the street too, wandering around. Some more crazy than others.
Had it been scary?
I had this encounter in Georgia with a guy who was really very, very sketchy, and I kind of later found out that he was like into me, and in a very odd and dark kind of way. And so after that, it was a good learning lesson, because growing up in like a bubble in the Northeast, and I went to a nice high school, safe place, went to a nice college, safe place, and I never had to grow that awareness, like maybe like a female has to grow, where you get these creepy guys. I never had to grow that, and the walk has had to force me to trust my feelings with a person. And so now when a guy or, someone comes up to me and I don't immediately get that like good vibe off of them, I'm just like walk right by them. And there's a lot of that. There's nothing to them. Probably they just want to see what's going on. But for me, it's like I'm meeting so many people every day. If I see a guy who just doesn't look like I want to have a conversation with, I'm not going to have a conversation with you. I'm just going to pass by you. But then there's other people, like the other night, as I was telling you, like this woman invited me into her house. And for a brief second, I thought, what do you think of this woman? You think it's safe to go in there? You think, you're going to be robbed, anything like that? Because it's just me. I got to trust myself, and I'm on my own. So it's on my shoulders to protect me. So it's important to have those thoughts. And I had them, and then it's like, no, she seems like a great woman. I have no bad feelings about her. She seems like a genuinely nice woman. So I went in, had a great dinner, met her family, and she was wonderful. But as far as meeting these, every day I'm meeting new people that I don't know, and I don't know their culture as well as I do back in the States. So I have to be more discerning. So I just trust my gut. But most 99.9% of the people are fantastic people. And when a car stops in front of you and like two guys get out in hoodies or whatever, 99.999% of the time they're going to smile and be like, "Oh, your dog's awesome," and like super, look at this green gun, they're going to be nice. But you got to have that awareness at the same time, and just
that's always a hard balance, because you want to have those experiences with locals, like getting invited into the home and taking people up on their kindness if they want to offer it, but then you're also trying to be safe. So you have to be open enough to like have that, because that's part of the journey, right? But then also you don't want to end up in the Georgia situation where you have this guy following you or whatever. I'm guessing he followed you or whatever. So
yeah, and there's like I remember like reading these articles of kidnappings or whatever in Mexico, or people getting taken and stuff like that. when you're first traveling and you're young, everything is bubbly and the world is bright and you're seeing it all through rose tinted glasses, and that's great. And the world is an awesome place, and there's so many beautiful things, and the people are super friendly, and there's amazing food everywhere, and the culture is different everywhere, and the world is this fantastic, awesome playground that you can go and explore. But like, at the same time, people get kidnapped, and it's not all sunshine and rainbows. Like, you have to be aware of that. And so you can't just trust everyone willy-nilly. But people in general are very, very good people. And people in general just want to live their lives. They want to work, and then they want to go home and be with their family. But it's a skill that I've had to develop, and one that I guess I kind of knew about before I left, but I didn't know the weight of which, like how important it was going to be, being on my own and just having to rely on myself.
So let's talk about some of the practical stuff, like your budget. How much did you save before you went? You said you were working in the solar industry and you've been saving. Sounds like you've gotten a couple sponsors along the way, and that was no small feat. No pun intended. Sorry. So you want to break down, like, are you keeping a budget? I'm just trying to get an idea of what this is all costing you, and how you've been able to, we know how you've been able to afford it because you saved up for 8 years and you worked your tail off. What are you spending on the ground? Where are you sleeping? How does all logistical stuff working out for you?
Yeah. So in the States, I got maybe a handful of hotels, and that was only when like someone bought them for me. Just camped every night.
Like, people would come up to you and just say like, "Hey, I'm going to buy you a room for tonight. Like, I think it's cool what you're doing."
I did have that a couple times, but more often it was like a family friend who maybe came down and visited me while I was walking and got me like dinner and then put me up for a night, kind of thing, or used their hotel points to put me up. But through Central America, camping mostly all the time, in Honduras and El Salvador, the hotel rooms were like $15 a night, and I got one every night except for one night because El Salvador is in a gang war and Honduras is just not safe.
As opposed to camping.
As opposed to camping. I was like, I'm just not going to take any chances. I have some money saved up. I'm going to do that. But camping, like here right now in Ecuador, if I camp, I'll spend like $7 a day. And that's including breakfast and lunch. And then occasionally I'll have to buy dog food. It's a little more, and maybe I'll spend like $15 a day with the dog food, and maybe some, if I can get something, buy bread or whatever for when I'm in my tent. But yeah, I mean, just not getting a hotel room and camping, I'm spending below like $10 a day. Costa Rica was expensive. Costa Rica is an expensive place. It varies country to country. Some are more expensive than others. But yeah, I spend probably only like $10 a day, I'd say. Actually, before I left, I got my primary sponsor, Philadelphia Sign, and the CEO and owner knew Anne Marie, the girl who passed away. And I went to school with both of his sons, or two of his sons, and college with one of them. And so this article came out about me, and he read it, and then he invited me over to talk about sponsorship, and he just wanted to get behind me any way possible. So I get money biweekly from Philadelphia Sign, and they donate $1 a mile into Anne Marie's scholarship fund. So it's a really cool partnership, and they're a great company, very green, and just like Bob, the owner, is like super down to earth, great guy. Once I got that sponsorship and I knew I would have a little bit of money coming in every week or bi-weekly, I put all the money I saved up and I just threw it all at my student loans so I wouldn't have to be paying that off. So now I have a little bit of student loans left and I have like nothing in my bank account, but it's being replenished every 2 weeks. So yeah, I live on like about $10 a day, I'd say, and don't have a nest egg, but work.
Hey, well, these things all Yeah. I mean, you never know where things take you. And it sounds like you're getting also some help along the way from family, friends, from strangers, beautiful strangers who are taking you in and feeding you. And, some of the best parts about travel are those connections. Have you felt like Anne Marie's presence on this trip at all?
I definitely feel, I'm definitely aware of it. And I definitely feel there's times, I don't think of it every day, obviously, but there's times where it comes into awareness, and I just remember just like how fortunate I am. And
because this is how it all started, really. I mean, this was the thing that kind of shocked you into.
It's so strange that, she dies and I live, and it's so binary. And I think about it that way, and it's like it could have just as easily been me. And so I just try and enjoy as much as possible, and try not to take it for granted. And just remember how fortunate I am. It's like any friggin' second you can go, and then it's all blackness after that.
Yeah, it's a hugely important thing to remember, I think, and also such a great motivator. It's like I always say I'm like morbidly happy, because it's like I think about death a lot, in the sense that like I don't have this idea, like none of us are immortal. So it's like, in that way, it's like it gives you a sense of urgency to do the things you want to do, like in a good way. Cause you're like, hey, we won't be around forever. Or like maybe your body won't be in this condition forever. You won't be this age you are now forever. I mean, there's so many things. It's like all impermanent. So like, it really is a carpe diem situation. I love that.
When I was 17, I was reorganizing my life in comparison to death. One of the realizations that I had is that, whether you're 7 years old, you're 17, you're 27, or you're 70, it's all the same in the end. If you're going to heaven, or you're food for worms, whatever it is, it's all the same in the end. You don't get to bring any of it with you. And so just, it's the poignancy while you're here. You can't let this is dangerous. I can't do this because it's dangerous, so I'm just going to stay inside and play it safe. You're going to die anyway. Go out and have an adventure and take your chances.
Amen, brother. What's something new you recently learned about yourself that you don't think you would have learned without this walk?
I'm better at languages than I thought I was. Not to say that I'm great, but in high school I was like, I'm never going to learn a language, but being surrounded by it helps a lot.
Cool. What about how you imagine this trip versus the actual reality of it? How has it been at all like what you imagined all those many years when you were laying in bed, tossing and turning, thinking, I'm going to be here then, and this? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I don't know really what I just thought it was going to be, big adventure. I don't know. In my naive Northeast little bubble mind, definitely put America into perspective for me. Like, what a great country that is. Holy cow. I don't know. I also thought it was going to be more like wild. When I imagined I'd be waking up in El Salvador, I thought I was going to be, like in this totally wild, maybe on a dirt path, like jungle place. But it's developed like anywhere else, more or less. And, you can get a hotel room if you want. And there's great food. The pupusas,
Love
holy cow.
pupusas.
Oh, my God. They're amazing. They're like 25 cents a piece. But yeah, it's just like, it's more, you have like, I had these like broad ideas. And now it's like filling in the details of, what the world is actually like. But yeah, I'm not sure. It's different, but I didn't go in with like insane expectations for anything. Yeah.
Are you planning a route along the way, or have you kind of sketched things out to a certain extent?
Yes, I have a rough path.
Okay.
But then obviously go road by road kind of thing. And if I get warned off an area from locals and say, take this road instead of that road, I'll go that way. If there's a good shoulder, I'll take that one. So I work out the details as I go, but I have like the rough map of the broad strokes of things. Yeah.
What is the number one thing you want to achieve or do in the next 5 years during this walk?
Man, I'd love to have a book published. That'd be awesome. And actually be making some money that I can save for when I get back. That'd be really nice, so I don't have to start at zero when I get back. And I'm actually going to be sending out queries to some agents very soon, maybe in a week or so. I have a book written already about the first year, so it's within reach, I believe.
That's awesome. I have no doubt that you'll work that out. I mean, you certainly are somebody that has dreams and then actually goes after them until you achieve them. So I'm sure that it will be the same with the book or whatever it is you want. And been following your work at theworldwalk.com, and there's some awesome articles there as well as pictures, man. You're a really great photographer.
Getting there. I love it. I enjoy it a lot. Some days are easier than others to take it. When it's like 100 degrees out, I'm like, and I see a photo, I'm just like, I'm walking. I'm not for that 5 seconds to take that photo.
Now, here is Tom when he was 4 years into his world walk, and this interview was recorded in June 2019.
Here you are 3 years later, and you're in Croatia, and you're still walking around the world. So congratulations, man.
Thank you. It's been a long journey.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, all right. So, of course, I have a million questions, but the first one I'm going to ask is, how's Savannah doing, your dog?
Oh, she's good, man. She's in perfect health. She's a beast. Relaxing right now at my cousin's house. So she's just, she just wants to walk all day. So I'm walking her as much as I can. But yeah, she's in great health. She's happy.
How fit are you right now?
I'm feeling good, man. We do 24 miles a day pretty easily, and wake up each day, do it again, no problem. So I'm feeling good, man. Just moving along, and it's easy walking here in Europe, so feeling good.
You've been doing this for how long now?
So actually on the road, it's been 1,151 days.
Okay. Wow. Have you gone home at all or anything, and then just gone back and picked up where you left off, or have you just been walking the entire time?
Yeah, actually, after I finished South America, I went home to get Savannah's paperwork to enter Europe, and I started getting kind of stomach cramps when I was back in the States. I ended up getting really sick. I started walking Ireland. I walked Ireland into Scotland, and I got really sick. So actually, I stopped walking for almost a year, and I lost about 45 pounds, and I spent a month in the Royal Hospital of London getting tests for parasites, all this stuff. They couldn't figure out what it was. Eventually, I flew back home. They were just throwing different antibiotics at it until something started working, and I recovered. And then I was working out, going to the gym, building my endurance back. And then after, almost a year off because of this illness, then I flew into Copenhagen and started walking Europe again. Did you have any doubts about starting up again, or did you always know you were going to start up again after you solved this out? Yeah, no, never doubt. No, never doubt. It was not a great time. I was in a lot of pain all the time, but I was just always thinking about was once I get healthy again, get back out there. I'm really sorry to hear that, man. Yeah, I thought I read something somewhere about you being sick, but I had no idea that it was such a long and intense thing. I mean, 45 pounds, you're like a very fit guy. I can't imagine you 45 pounds less. I mean, is there 45 pounds to take off of you even? I know you're tall, but... Yeah, no, I was like skinning. It was probably another 2 months and that would have been end game. Really? Yeah. What was it? They didn't figure out what it was. The doctors just thought maybe I drank some water. I shook someone's hand. It was just some virulent bacteria, just some freak thing. Just a weird thing that I caught that kind of sat in me and grew and grew. So you went back to the States, you were getting stomach cramps, then you went to continue your walk in Europe, and then it hit you there, and then you were stuck in London, basically. Yeah, so when I got back stateside, I was just getting little stomach aches, and I just thought maybe I was eating something strange, or maybe it was being back with different bacteria in the water or something like that. And so it was just like little stomach aches, and then by the time I got to Ireland, The pain, I was getting like, oh, they were kind of like spasms in the stomach. They were so bad. I was on the ground, just writhing in pain for a full minute at a time. Couldn't see, just kind of black out for like a minute in pain. And it just got worse and worse. And then basically my body started attacking itself. So it wiped out all the good bacteria in my intestines. So I developed colitis and was bleeding internally, and I couldn't hold anything down, and wasn't everything I was eating I wasn't getting any nutrition from because it wasn't absorbing in the intestines, and it was not a good time. It was just a lot of pain. When I was going through it, I wasn't depressed or really down even, because I had started what I've been thinking about since I was 17. I had walked from Philadelphia all the way down to Uruguay over 2 years. And I had lived how I wanted to live. So if that had been the end, I would have been fine with that. I would have been content because gave it a shot.
Wow, man. I mean, that's crazy that you were going through that much pain and you were still having that kind of positive outlook. I mean, when you say you were on the ground and blind and in pain, that's serious pain, dude. I mean, when you were going through this for a year, were you in that kind of pain for a year? Was that coming and going like that, or?
That wasn't even the worst of it. But from there on, it was probably about 4 or 5 months of going through having those spasms. And then there's like 2 months where I had the colitis, and just like everything I ate was just pain all day, and I was sleeping 2 hours a night. And it was just, there's like 2 months where it was just nightmarish. It was terrible.
Well, yeah, I mean, just from the exhaustion and the pain, I mean, you could easily go the other way. By that, I mean, the dearly departed. You know, I mean, it doesn't seem like it would be that far off when you're in that kind of situation. I mean, also, when you look back on something like this and we're talking about it, okay, well, it's one thing. It was like, all right, well, then, it was like this for 2 months, and then like, you're chunking out time. But like at the time, you didn't know what this was or if it would ever go away, right? I mean, that's mentally taxing, dude.
Yeah, it was, there's no clear end in sight, and we were going to doctors and they just couldn't, I spent a month back and forth at the Royal London Hospital and getting every test under the sun in infectious disease, and they couldn't figure out what it was. Even going back to the States, they never figured out what it was. So they just like I said, started throwing antibiotics at it until one of them started working, and then it got a little bit better, and that kind of, and then in the corner. Then once the bacteria was gone, then they could start fighting the colitis and everything else. So it was a long process, and I never got too dark. It was just exhaustion, really, from the pain, and just get through it. And the weird thing about it, I was back home. The blessing in disguise. I was back home when the Eagles went to the Super Bowl, so that was
nice. Nice, man. Well, I hope the 2 hours you slept that day wasn't during the game, because that was one awesome game, man.
Just 8 months of agony for that reward. It was worth it.
In case you're wondering why I'm giggling so much, because we're both from the Philly area, so we waited a long time for that.
Yeah.
You haven't had any sign of any of that coming back or relapse or anything? No. Totally healthy?
No. Yeah, totally healthy. The biggest thing was, after walking South America, after we spoke in Ecuador, and then I went through the desert of Peru and Chile I was in the desert for about 5 months. All the coast is all desert. So, and then crossing the Andes, where it went up to about 5,000 meters, and it was extremely difficult walking. And I was just in such peak physical and mental condition. I was so honed in. And then to go from my absolute peak down to my absolute lowest physically and probably mentally too, fitness, coming back to Europe was really it was perfect timing, because there's easy walking in Europe. There's bike paths. There's a lot of towns. It's developed. To go from such a low and back into Europe, I could really ease myself back into things physically and mentally.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of like a nice runway, I guess, to get the walk going again. So what do you have left now? You've walked from after you got through your illness and everything, which we just heard that story. It's no small thing, but you flew back to London?
So I picked up in Copenhagen, so Denmark.
Oh, yeah, where you left off. Okay.
Yeah, no, you're right though. I stopped in Scotland, but it was kind of difficult walking there because it was so cold and rainy, and I was like, I didn't want to go back into that not feeling 100%. So I started in Denmark, where I knew there'd be nice, flat, easy walking into Germany, through Germany, Belgium, France, Spain, and then Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, up Italy, Slovenia, now in Croatia. And so from here, we make our way basically along the coast to Greece and then across Turkey, into Georgia, Azerbaijan, across the Caspian Sea, a couple months in Kazakhstan, across Mongolia, and then fly down to Australia, across Australia, fly to California, across California, back to New Jersey.
Wow. So close, but not really.
No, I'm like halfway, long way to go.
It sounds close when you just rattle off because you think, oh yeah, just take a bus here, fly there. But no, you're walking. Yeah. You're walking.
Hey,
you have so much experience now on the ground. I mean, just looking ahead, we're going to talk about where you've been, but do you look ahead and think, oh, I'm nervous about that? Or are you just kind of literally taking it one step at a time, one day at a time?
I'm through the worst of it. Central America was definitely the most dangerous part that I'll be walking through. And the rest, the only thing that I think will be a pretty big challenge for me will be going through Kazakhstan and Mongolia, because it's about a 6-month stretch there of walking. And since it's so far north, I'll probably have to do it in summer, or if I go into winter a little bit, it'll be, pushing through snow and it'll be difficult going. So that's the only thing. I got to figure out the timing of how I'm going to work that out. But the rest of it, I know what I'm doing now. I got everything down pat. After South America and Central America, I know what I'm doing. I know how to, get water, how to find food, how to find a place to sleep in strange places. So I'm not too concerned, and the countries from here are relatively safe. So yeah, it should be good going, and looking forward to it.
All right, tell us how you do all of those things you just said. How you get water, how you find a place to sleep, how you get food.
Yeah, so water, I carry obviously a couple water bottles. I have dromedary bags, which are just like 6-liter impenetrable bags, so they don't puncture or anything. They're very durable. That varies country to country. It depends. Say in Peru, for example, I would only buy bottled water. So I knew even when I was in the desert, I'd get to town, I would load up on water, get the bottled water. In other places, on longer stretches, maybe I have to filter water. Or in a developed place, like going through Italy, there's fountains everywhere. It's
right,
easy.
That's easy. I was thinking like going through the desert, that would probably be the scariest, right?
Yeah, the good thing is I'm generally walking roads. Sometimes I walk past, but they're usually not that long. Roads are the best way to move internationally. So even in like Kazakhstan, I'll go through some very long stretches, maybe 200 kilometers, something like that, without getting to a town. I should be able to bring enough, especially up there because it'll be colder. I won't be sweating. I should be able to bring enough because I push a cart that I can load up and make that live on 2 liters of water a day, something like that.
Yeah. Food wise, I mean, you're just carrying it all in the cart and everything, or have you become an expert at scavenging or finding food along the way, or what have you been doing?
No, and no scav. I'm not like shooting squirrels or anything. It's just dry goods. Load up on granola, pasta, peanut butter, rice. Whatever is available in the country that's dry that I can bring with me. And then when I get to town, then I just wolf down as much food as I can at a restaurant, drink a bunch of milk for the protein, calories, the fat. But otherwise it's pretty straightforward. It's just knowing what works and what doesn't work to bring. And that's really just dry goods. And then when I get into town, chow down. And then as far as finding a place to sleep, that's much more convoluted. That's much more of a feeling that you have to work out. And each country, again, has a very different feel. You get a feel for how far apart things are, how much people are moving outside. For example, like when I was going through Morocco, I was going through there when there were long days and people were outside until 8:30, 9 o'clock. So I had to wait until right before sunset, basically, to find a place, or else someone would stumble upon me, and that was that. So it's really a feeling on the country and knowing the terrain and where to look for a place to sleep. And that's just something I've developed over 3 years of finding weird places to sleep.
Yeah, because fairly recently, I think I read a post on your blog. It was something sleep related. I think you had a policeman with you somewhere or something. Was it Albania? I don't remember.
Algeria.
Where was
Yeah.
it? Algeria. Okay, yeah. Yeah, what happened? I mean, tell us some stories, man. You got to have a few.
Yeah, I got plenty. Algeria was a crazy country. It's very closed off. They are insular. It was a very difficult visa process. It's difficult to get a visa in, and they don't grant many of them. So I took a boat there from Valencia, Spain. The border of Morocco and Algeria is closed, so you got to take a ferry down. And I get off the boat, and basically as soon as I get to, I walk with just like not many, just some Algerians, and I get to the border control, and they see the American passport, and like right away, they call over the police. And from that point on, as soon as I got to the passport check-in, I had police with me through the entire length, 24/7, a police escort with me the entire length of Algeria.
Really?
And it was a very good thing at first because it was like some of these guys spoke a little bit of English, and I could get local tips. I'd get into a town and I'd say, where can I eat here? And they'd take me to a place and we'd have good food. And it was nice to have company.
Would you buy them dinner? Would they buy you dinner? How did that work?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, I'd buy them dinner. Yeah, sure. I mean, it wasn't expensive. Just sardines, some bread, and.
Well, I mean, how long was the walk through Algeria?
That was 45 days.
45 days? They gave you a police escort the whole time?
The whole time, man. And sometimes it was like, there was a point.
Because they wanted to watch you, or because they didn't think you were safe?
They went through a really violent time with the Civil War back in the day. And so the police has a really strong presence just everywhere. Even if I wasn't there, there's basically at every town, at like the roundabout entering every town, there's a police checkpoint area. And this is just like through it is to make sure there's no extremism entering the country. It's a very safe country. And was it before the military or is it because of the military? So they already have a very strong police presence. But as far as why they were escorting me, I think it was just because, I don't know, I mean, they don't let a lot of tourists in, and I'm an American walking through there. They don't want any bad press. I would guess that's it. But it was an insane experience. There's times when I was walking, there's like literally like 12 guys. There's like 3 cars at points. And I'm just a guy pushing a cart with my dog. And I have like an SUV in front of me, 2 SUVs behind me. It was crazy.
And just going really slow because you're just walking, right? Like,
yeah, just walking. And as soon as
surreal.
It was surreal, man. And as soon as someone would come and talk to me, like normally I'm in whatever country, and people, when you're out walking, people want to come and talk to you and see how you're doing, whatever. You just run into people. But it was in Algeria, it's like someone came over to talk to me. All the police were out like right away interrogating this guy. What do you want with this American? And so it was a very different experience for sure.
So in that way, you got to hang out with locals and meet locals, but only police locals, right? Because you couldn't get near the other locals because the police would swarm them if you did. Yeah.
In that way, it was a little sterile in that way for sure. And also the other thing was they wouldn't let me camp just because they'd always say it's unsafe, you can't camp. So I had to get to a hotel every night, and it really like wore on me where, especially the last like 2 weeks of Algeria, the hotels were far apart a lot. So usually it was like 30 miles. And I was going through there when it was 10-hour days of sunlight, and I would have to do 10 hours of walking. So I would literally walk sun up to sundown to get to this hotel so they could so that I could stop. So they were really long days. And by then I had been with these guys, and it's not that they're not good guys, but just being watched all the time, it ends up driving you crazy.
Right.
And so sometimes you just want to sit and relax and just like chill and just be in my own thoughts. Instead, I have a police guy come over to me, ask how I'm doing. It's like, dude, you're a nice guy, but I just want to sit here and just be like an idiot and zone out I'm so low on blood sugar and tired. I just want to zone out and think nothing. But you have these guys who come and want to talk to you. It was a really different challenge in a lot of ways. And like the police they were great. just the presence of just always having eyes on you, it wears on you.
Obviously, you didn't know this when you chose to walk through Algeria, right? I mean, you had no idea this was going to happen because you essentially picked your route, right? I mean, you're walking around the world, but there's a lot of different ways you can do it. What drew you to that country?
Yeah, so I wanted to walk through some of Africa, but the big problem with walking Africa is you need a lot of visas. If I wanted to walk from the north to south, I need so many visas, it would end up taking years just getting the visas for these countries. It's a huge continent. And so I wanted to do some of Africa, and basically the best way to do that was just do the north. I just do Morocco, where I don't need a visa. I would only need to apply for Algeria, and I could do Tunisia without a visa. I would have loved to have gotten to Egypt, but the problem is Libya is a total mess right now. Lots of warring factions, so I'm not going to walk across Libya right now. So it was just those three countries, and Algeria was the biggest and in the middle, and that's how I wound up there.
Wow, that's a crazy story, man. All right, so what are some other things that have happened along the way? That's a very open-ended question, and I know you could go a million directions with this, but yeah, I want to hear some tales from the road, man, because I know you got a few.
Yeah, and I mean, there's been a bunch. I've stayed with locals in Morocco, stayed with locals in Tunisia, some young people that showed me around Tunis, which is a beautiful white city that you just never really hear about. I can't recommend Tunisia enough. It was a beautiful country, super cheap, really friendly people, and democratic, open-minded. Yeah, and then getting into Italy, I'm sure you've been to Italy. Italy's like just this beautiful country, and it lives up to all the hype. Every town is so filled with history. Everyone's so well dressed, and it's easygoing. I mean, Europe's been a very different experience in a lot of ways than South America. South America is very wild, and Europe's been pretty easy. So I'm looking forward to moving along into some wilder countries. But I mean, the greatest stories have probably come out of Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia. I slept in some weird places, met strange people.
What do you mean strange people? In what way?
So I don't know. For example, in Algeria, I get into this town one day, and this is probably like the longest day where I walk like maybe 36 miles in this day to end up in this town. And I'm like delirious. There's no hotel there, but the police tell me we have a place that you can stay. And it's like this big ordeal. There's like 25 policemen in this, like all working just to find me a place to stay. And so I get in the van. They take me up to this, like, I think it's going to be, I don't know, some government building or something like that, or maybe like they have a lot of youth hostels. And I thought maybe it was one of those. It ends up being like this guy who like works on cars like up in the mountains, and it's like this really kind of like it's like a sketchy place. I'm way up in the mountains, and they have a couple dogs who are kind of beaten up, but they're nice enough, and they have macaque monkeys there in Algeria, and they have a macaque monkey like tied up. And I'm like, this is like really bizarre. My head's kind of spinning right now. So I get put into this garage, and there's a little back room, and I sleep on the sofa with this heater. And the owner's sitting with me there. He doesn't speak any English. So like they bring me some food, and I'm just sitting there like in silence, nodding, and he's just sitting there in silence, and there's stains on the wall. It's concrete, and I don't know where I'm at. I don't have internet connection, anything like that. And so I just really, you have to put your trust in the police, and they got me all this way. Yeah, it felt a little off, and it was just that I was so far away from everything, and I was out of internet connection, and it was a little off. It was a little rough, but I could tell in the guy that he was a nice guy. And so I was like, okay, that assuaged my fears. But everything else about the place, it was like I couldn't lock the door, and there's this big hole in the wall. So when I put my cart in front of the door, it's like the guy could just easily just come through this hole in the wall. And I'm just thinking, I'm just gonna fall asleep, and that's all you can do. Like there's nothing else I can do at this point. Fall asleep, hope for the best, and it was fine. And they're nice guys. Yeah, there's certain points where you just have to trust this local, and it's fine. Yeah, and it works out most of the time.
I mean, for me, I think one of the most psychologically challenging things would be finding the place to sleep outside at night. Night after night in countries all over the place. You're going through urban areas, suburban areas, like outskirts of cities. you're just in so many different types of environments. And I mean, anybody listening to this, just take a walk around and look around and just figure out a place to sleep at night. It's not always that straightforward, right? Well, yeah, you can find a place to sleep, but are you going to get in trouble? Are you going to feel comfortable? Are you going to be like scared the whole night that you can't sleep? I mean, how do you deal with all this?
It's such a challenge every night. Most of the time that it's kind of like a game, and it's oddly fun in a way, because it's like this huge puzzle you have to figure out. You have to find, you're weighing all these different things. The best is like in the desert, it was great because no one's going to show up. You just walk in the desert, it's perfectly dark. But then, like you said, there's other times walking through Colombia or Argentina where it's a little more populated, and you don't know maybe how safe it is, and you got to find a place to hide away. But the thing is also about it is that when the sun's going down, you have a choice. You got to find somewhere. And some places are less than ideal. But generally, once it's dark and you're hidden away, you're good. I mean, it would take crazy odds for someone to stumble upon you unless you're on someone's land or something like that. If I'm somewhere, if I can find a little patch of woods or an abandoned house or something, tuck myself away in there, not use my headlamp, anything like that, the odds of someone stumbling upon me, who's going to be wandering around, at night through these forests or wherever it is, it's really just make it until dark, and then it's probably good. So don't get caught during the
abandoned house sounds kind of scary. I don't know.
I've done a lot of abandoned houses, and at first, I remember like one of the first ones I stayed at was in Ecuador, and I was just like, it was so hard to sleep, and I slept right, like there's a stairwell, and you sleep on the second floor, but the entire night you're thinking like someone's going to come in here for sure. But then all through Peru, in Peru, they have this weird law where if you build a house on some land and someone living in it for 10 years, then you just own that land. So what happens is these rich people build like these little brick houses. They pay a homeless guy to live there for 10 years, and then they own the land. And so they're all along the desert, these abandoned houses. And I was sleeping in them all the time. And after a while, I was like, I would only look for them because after, like even in these huge, there'd be like these developments of empty houses, and there'd be one guy living in this development, and you could sleep on the outskirts of one of these houses, you'd be fine, or you'd be in the desert and there'd be nothing around except this one little house. And they were great. You're out of the wind and you have a little concrete you can cook on, and I started looking for those. Even
though the sun's going down, you're like, all right, we can always find a way to tuck away, but can you? I mean, there must have been some nights where you're in urban areas, you're just like, all right, where am I going to go? And then do you just get a place to stay, or?
Yeah. I mean, through Central and South America, I was really tight on money through the entire way. So it was extremely rare that I got a hotel or something like that, unless the country was really cheap. Now in Europe, especially through Italy, it was really difficult finding places to sleep, but you can generally find a campsite. It's been more of a mix in Europe between hotels and camping. Like I said, in the Americas, I was camping like probably 28 out of 30 nights. I was camping the entire time pretty much. And here with Patreon, I'm able to get some more hotels when I need to, which is great. Kind of take some of the adventure out of it, but it's good. It's a good thing.
I think you've earned your adventure stripes, man.
Yeah. It's a big enough adventure. But I remember one in specific actually that I was thinking about, going through Panama, and like looking back on it, it was an insane place to sleep. And actually, I've had a couple of these, but I was walking the Pan American, and I'm kind of like up in the mountains, and the road is pretty small. There's not a ton of cars, but it was so steep on either side of the road, and it's kind of really thick, almost jungle. So there's nowhere I could get in and like find a place to sleep. And I just walked, and this happens a decent amount of time, but I just walked, and then it was dark and there was no to sleep. And there was literally just like a patch of grass on the side of the road. So I just and it's kind of in this little ditch. I laid out my tarp and just, as I fell asleep right beside the road. It could have been so easy to find me. I'm right there. But I just laid there, didn't turn the headlamp on. I'm kind of hidden, fall asleep, wake up before sunrise, and I'm gone.
Okay. And the setup is just a tarp and a sleeping bag? Is that?
That's what it is. I was up in the mountains, so there's no mosquitoes or anything like that. And that was low profile because if I had set up the tent, people would have seen me. in the desert, I could use the tarp as well. There's no rain, there's no bugs, but generally, yeah, I set up the tent.
Yeah. Do you set up the tarp when you have just the tarp set up, like the minimal setup? Do you just set up the tarp like a tent and sleep under it, or how do you
sleep on it? I sleep on the tent or on the tarp.
You just lay the tarp on the ground and just sleep on it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Got it.
It's nice. That's the best, man. That's the best sleeping.
How did you get through the Darien Gap? That's the connection point between Panama and South America, right? But it's like a wooded area. Do you have to go around that, or how does that work?
Yeah, I flew over it.
Yeah.
I think there's been a handful of people who have crossed that.
That's like a serious thing. You can't really just do that.
Yeah, no, it's
super
like
dangerous.
Jungle. There's no roads through it. There's narco traffickers through there. I mean, unless you're like that's a whole thing in itself. And that's I'm not that big of an adventurer.
No, I was gonna say if you walk through that, then that's just crazy talk.
Yeah.
I imagine you landed in Ushuaia, to the southern tip of South America in Argentina, right? It's a beautiful area down there. How did you feel when you got there? When you hit the southern tip of South America, was it anticlimactic, or were you just like fall on your knees? Oh my God, I did it!
Yeah. No, you're at the end of the world. I mean, it's a beautiful area, and to get down there, and then I took a ship to Antarctica, so I was able to plant my feet on Antarctica for a little bit. I mean, you're just going, especially when you're going down to Antarctica, you're on like an alien planet. There's no sign of humans, and it's just another world. But yeah, finishing the Americas is monumental. And when I look back on it, even then, I was thinking like, you just walked it's insane. You just walked from Philadelphia all the, down to Uruguay. It was insane. That's crazy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, it's out of your front door, right? That's the thing that's even... I just love that idea. I mean, I've talked about it on the podcast before. Just the idea that you can leave your front door and go on some epic adventure like this, and you have done that, and it's so inspiring, man. Okay, so it says a lot that you've been to all these countries, and you were really digging Italy. What is it about Italy that's been so special in terms of traveling through on foot?
Yeah, I mean, Italy's just it's so dense in history. I've never been to a place where even the little villages in Tuscany or in southern Italy or in Sicily, every village there's a beautiful church and beautiful little square, and it's just every square inch of this place is just stunning. It's beautiful. It was easy walking comparatively, but Sicily, I was up in the mountains, and then from Rome to Florence, across over the mountains a little bit. And it's a nice variety. You walk along the coast, beautiful. The mountains are beautiful. It's just, and the people, there's great coffee. The food is great. They're all so well dressed. It's just like,
and there you are pushing your cart, haven't showered in days. Are you showering in rivers and stuff like that if you're outside for a while, or do you just wait till you get hotel rooms and things like that?
No, yeah, sure. I mean, if there's nice water, definitely jump in. And yeah, I mean, I do obviously when I get to a hotel, I shower, but yeah, if it's a nice river, a creek or something, it's hot. Yeah, for sure. Jump in there.
You must have learned a lot in terms of like how much you've packed on your cart and everything. Have you stripped down things pretty good?
Yeah, I mean, it's exactly what I need. Nothing of excess. I use everything. It's like a balance of, so for example, say I carry some like Gorilla Tape with me, and I almost never use it, but it's the type of thing that I don't want to be somewhere without. It's so useful when I do need it. So that's like a weight worth carrying. And so it's just weighing also how vital this thing is versus how much does it weigh versus how often am I going to use this thing. And I definitely have it pared down to everything I have is either extremely important or I use it every day.
What kind of reaction do you get when you tell people what you're doing? Like, do you try to keep that on the DL when you're interacting with somebody? Or if they ask, you'll tell them? Or do you let fly because it makes a good story? It makes it a lot easier to connect with people when you have a story like that, right?
Yeah, generally I'll say, if I meet someone, I say, I try and connect with them. I've been somewhere that's similar. I've been like, this is how Colombia was, or, this is El Salvador, because when I say I'm walking around the world, it ends up just dominating the conversation. And I have to explain. They say, you're walking around the world. Is it, you're walking? And it's like, well, how do you mean? And then it ends up just being the same conversation most of the time.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I'm walking. I walk and I camp, and I walk and I camp, and I walk and I camp, and that's it. But I usually just, I let it kind of slip under the radar if I can, and try and have a conversation with the local and learn more about them.
How are you different from the guy who stepped out of his door in Philly those years ago? I was at however many years it's been now.
Yeah, it's 2015. I thought I was somewhat worldly back then. And looking back, you're just such an idiot and didn't know anything about the world. I mean, just in life, you don't change like in one moment and like, I'm a different person now. It's kind of this gradual thing. And I'm so much more, I've seen so much more. I've seen different cultures, different people, different foods. I've been through like such challenges and tests of will and physically that I'm just more worldly and more assured of where I am, where I stand in the world. And then the other thing I would say is that came out of walking itself. It was kind of a byproduct of just walking every day. So say, for example, it's getting towards the end of the day. I'm still feeling good. Or there's maybe I'm at a nice campsite right now, and it's 6:00 and the sun goes down at 8:00. So at 6:00, I see this nice green field or something. Ooh, this is a perfect campsite. At first, I would keep walking. I'd try and just get as much miles as I can in, and then call it a day and find somewhere to sleep. But after a while, I started realizing, like, I'm going to walk another hour. I'm going to walk 3 miles. This is a 25,000-mile walk. I can wait. I can save those 3 miles till tomorrow. And this has sort of affected everything in my life, with the photography, where with my photography, I don't really I don't have any angst over, I need to become a better photographer. It's just trust the process kind of thing. Take one good photograph and try and get a little better in that, and do that every day, and you get better. And so it's taught me the way I think about it is you can't walk around the world in a day, as with any project. So just take it one little piece at a time, and then that's it, and be satisfied with your day. I walked 20 miles a day. I walked 18 miles. Okay, good job. Do whatever you got to do tomorrow.
The pace of walking around the world has slowed you down in all of your other activities, right? It sounds like that's a nice Zen place to be.
Yeah, it got rid of, I think in Western culture, or just like there's a lot of competition. And so you feel like you're always behind when you're trying to do something creative, and that you need to do something more. But you just got to control what you can control, do a little bit, and it'll add up to something bigger. And I've come to apply that with basically everything. And so, removed a lot of angst.
That's a big thing, I think, if you're able to shed that Western mindset, which we're brought up in, which is that idea of more is better, or always wanting more, needing more, needing to get better. Like you said, this sense of urgency. And particularly, I mean, I can't speak for everybody, but I can relate to what you're saying totally, being from the Northeast. And there is something with the hustle and bustle of the Northeast, but this is just generally in America. And I don't want to speak for other Western cultures, I guess, because we grew up in the States, but there is this very much this, what we just described, right? So to be able to shed that is a total life perspective change. I mean, that completely changes your life, right? Like your approach to everything.
Yeah, sure. I mean, like you said, especially in the Northeast, which is a very fast-paced area of the States, and it's built around these huge metropolitan areas where there's a lot of competition. You definitely have this expectation that you need to, fulfill these certain requirements. You need to have the bigger house. You're in a lot of competition with basically every aspect of your life in your own show. And that kind of, the competition just forces you to think that if you're not there immediately, then you're no good, and or you need to get there faster, and everything you do has to be 100%. You have to maximize. You listen to all these podcasts now, a lot of the podcasts, I listen to podcasts all day, but like this theme that you just hear about all the time is just like, here's how you can learn more efficiently and do this more efficiently, and this will make you more productive, and this is make you more productive. It just like drives me freaking crazy. It just take the photograph, do it, write 1,000 words, do the podcast, and improve that 1%. Just by doing it, you're going to improve because you're going to be critical of yourself, and that's enough. And just chill out, do a little bit each day, and that's it. And if you get better, good. If not, whatever.
I think you should I think you should start a podcast, and this is just that. It's just a 5-minute episode. We'll just take that audio clip, we'll publish it. There it is. Everybody, just chill out. You're gonna do it better over time. Everybody, freaking relax, okay?
That's it. 5-minute podcast.
When you came home, obviously you started having the pain and everything like that. But was it strange to be back in the States, like sickness stuff aside? What was that like?
I remember when I first went back after. I remember driving down our like main street in our town, and I grew up in like this nice little suburbs in South Jersey. And I remember driving down the street and being like, "This is utopia! Like this place is so nice," and I did not appreciate it. And sidewalks, everything's clean, trash cans, nice street lights, coffee shops. Like I grew up in a utopia.
You're really seeing it for the first time in a way.
Yeah. You see how, and it's not to say like in Argentina or in the mountains of Colombia where most people live in a concrete house, maybe with a tin roof. There's rebar on top, so when they have money, because they can't get bank loans, so when they have money, they build a second story kind of thing, and they live in very small square footage. It's not that they're any more or less happy, but to see that and to see the quality of things that we have in America and of infrastructure, it's like you go back and like I went to a great school and my town is very safe and it's super calm and it's just a nice place. And to go back there, like you realize, man, I won like basically the lottery of where I could have been born and the time and everything. So I was very appreciative of that. But otherwise, when I was sick, it was just I wasn't anywhere. I was just existing.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been strange too to maybe run into some old friends and you've just had all these experiences, and it was hard to relate in some way. I mean, you can't articulate everything you've been through.
Yeah, it's you grow. I mean, and I think I grew more than most people do in 2 years. So I definitely felt separated from them in a certain way. It was nice to go back and just like hang out with them and relax and, just be totally comfortable. And when I'm on the road, I don't really have any deep connections with anyone. I meet people maybe for a day or two and it's nice, but to go back with my friends where I've known these guys for years, it was great. I mean, I could, joke with them and relax. We speak the same language and we have the same rhythm of humor. And that's nice. But then, a certain part of me is thinking, I'm a different person and I've seen different things but that's nothing to hold against them. And it's just, we're slightly different people. But yeah, it was just, it was more or less, it was good to see them because I needed to be able to joke with people and I needed to build some good conversation.
You needed some good old fashioned, Philadelphia ball busting, it sounded like.
That's it.
Right? I'm glad to hear you haven't lost your accent either, which is good.
Do I have it?
Well, you mentioned seeing friends and missing friends, and in the first podcast we recorded, because I listened to it before our chat today, and you talked about some of the things that you were having to sacrifice for the walk, right? You hadn't seen your family since Georgia at the time. You had to give up a girl you were in love with. All the sacrifices you've made to do this walk. How do you feel about the sacrifices now, 4 years later?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of almost forgotten about. This is just my life now. I think back then when it was a year after I started, or a little over a year, it was still more poignant. It was still closer in the rearview mirror, all these things that kind of this big change in lifestyle. But now there's just my life. And when I look in the rearview mirror, it's just walking. So I don't really think about it. I mean, with the family, you definitely give away The thing I think about more, especially I turned 30 earlier in April, and you kind of get like this nesting syndrome where you're like, I need to get a house and get my plot of land and have a wife and kids and something like that. And I think that was more challenging because it wasn't something that I like. It wasn't some person or some physical concrete thing that I gave up. It was more like this lifestyle that I chose to push back. And when I was really craving it, going through like Spain and Morocco and Algeria for some reason, I was really having these like, I was just fantasizing all day of like the house I was going to build. It was this lifestyle that I can have. And it took me months to get past that and then just relax again and settle into the walking. That was the choice with this walk-in, is that life is kind of, I think it's up to timing. And when I'm young and I don't have responsibilities, that's when I need to do this. And later, I'll be able to get the house and the wife and everything else. This is the choice I made, and yeah, it's gotta live with it.
And that concludes part 1 of Tom Turcich's Walk Around the World. Come back for part 2 next Thursday. In the meantime, you can find Jason's podcast, Zero to Travel, wherever you listen to podcasts, and on his website, zerototravel.com. And if you just can't wait until next week, you can learn more about Tom at tomturcich.com. Ready for more unpacking? Visit afar.com and be sure to follow us on Instagram and Twitter. The magazine is at Afar Media. If you enjoyed today's exploration, I hope you'll come back for more great stories. Subscribing makes this easy. You can find Unpacked on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcast platform. And be sure to rate and review the show. It helps other travelers find it. This season, we also want to hear from you. Is there a travel dilemma, trend, or topic you'd like us to explore? Drop us a line at afar.com/feedback or email us at unpacked@afar.com. This has been Unpacked, a production of Afar Media. The podcast is produced by Aislinn Green and Nikki Galteland. Music composition by Chris Collin. And remember, the world is complicated. We're here to help you unpack it.